George Heller.
How's it going, George?
How's it going, George? How about separating the bulls and rams when it is time to keep them from breeding when you run a flirt? Like where to put them and whether or not they need to be grouped with other animals for social. So that's a good
question.
So with the bulls, we'll just go into it. We take the bulls out March 1st from the cow mob. All the bulls come out. Steers, heifers, everything else stays in. They're out until grass grows. We keep them separated, feeding them hay, and if we have some stockpile in the area, we'll feed them some stockpile. Once we start getting grass, that's when we'll either haul them or walk them to the sheep, and that's when we'll create the flurd
with the bulls.
With the bulls
and the sheep.
And then the bulls will stay in with the sheep until the sheep start lambing, and then the sheep can't keep up with the bulls' needs. The bulls need to move quicker than the sheep can keep up with, so that's when they kind of separate. And then once the lambs kind of get their feet under them,
which does
get
not
going
take
again.
very long.
No, it's a couple weeks, maybe a month max. That's when we stick the bulls back in with the sheep until July 1st when we put the bulls in with the cow mob.
So to recap, bulls go out March 1st and then go back in July. That's the important
thing. And then they're staying in until the next March 1st.
Yep.
Rams. So the rams, we put the rams in December 1st. They're in with the sheep. They get them bred within like 2 weeks, 3 weeks max, and then we just leave them in all winter long with the sheep until they lamb. And then the sheep are not like cattle. Sheep won't come into heat for a couple cycles just because they're recovering and recouping. But by I think it's the end of July, or like mid-July, when we'll get the whole flock up. We'll separate out, ram lambs and ewe lambs
to get a count for selling sheep that summer.
And then we will castrate any ram lambs that are not ram quality. And then everything that's castrated gets put back in with the sheep. And then we take the ram lambs out
with the big rams. We usually keep a couple big rams in there too.
We take we take them out. And they stay in, we call it like the bachelor pad.
The bachelor pad.
It's like a silvopasture area.
It's close to the house.
Yeah, and we don't have guard dogs with them, but the house dogs roam around here and they keep the coyotes at bay.
And 3 of the 4 house dogs were former guard dogs, so it's kind of like having guard dogs in the area.
Yeah, kind of.
But
so they stay out there until December 1st, obviously.
And then they go back in. Yeah, I mean, the things to think about, though, as far as, like, socialization and separating stuff, like, nobody likes to be left alone.
Yeah.
Like, on either end, the bulls or the sheep. And so, the bulls or the rams, I should say. And so, like, if you only have one bull or one ram, which I wouldn't really recommend anyway, because, like, redundancies are always a good thing to have. But they at least need one buddy. So, like, a wither or a steer or something to, like, hang out with, because it's like if they're by themselves, they can just get into trouble. They're herd animals, flock animals, whatever you want to say. And so they just do so much better when they have something else to interact with.
For your scenario, George, if you've got 2, let's say you got 1 or 2 rams. I can't remember. I think you bought 2. If you've looked at, I don't know if you've looked into the Rammobile that Greg's talked about. He's talking about it in videos. He's talked about it to some people.
Yep.
It's basically a 16 by 16 foot portable contraption. It's 4 cattle panels in a square, and then there's welded steel pipe as the frame, and then there's caster wheels on the bottom, so you can just push it kind of like a big shopping cart, but there's open floor.
Yeah, it's like an upside down shopping cart with wheels on the bottom.
It's like a chicken tractor, but for rams.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, if you wanted to keep the rams in the flock, so they couldn't get out, they couldn't breed, but they still feel like they're part of the flock.
You can do that.
You can do that for sure.
It just requires pushing it around.
Yeah, which.
Yep.
That's not super heavy.
Yep.
That's something you can do.
But. Yeah, and they the rams cannot get out of that, and predators cannot get in it either. So if you did,
you could even put it in your yard and push it around as a lawnmower.
Yeah.
And then the predators are not going to come close to your house. You don't have to worry about that either.
But and then obviously he's taking them out because we know George personally, so we know that he's in in Minnesota, so it's like his timing as far as taking stuff out and putting stuff back in, like your timing is going to be a little bit different from ours.
You want to be calving and lambing when that spring grass is really cranking.
Yep. And you don't want to do it in the winter.
Preferably lambing when it's even a little bit later than calving, because the lambs really need it to be warm, because wet and cold just kills lambs like crazy.
Yep.
So if you can, just time everything around that. I think sheep's gestation is like
5 months.
5 months, something like that. We could look it up and
someone's
get you the
going to correct us if we're wrong.
Find out the sheep's gestation, and then they will. You want to separate them out within I think it's 3 months after they lamb, or maybe a little before 2 months maybe.
The really what you got to worry about also is the ram lambs getting old enough to get the job done too, because
we separated out the ram lambs when they with the big rams.
Yeah, with the big rams. But that's something to keep in mind. Like, just because they look little, because they won't look like a full grown ram. Just because they look little, doesn't mean that they might not be able to breed something. Because you turn around one day and then you turn back around the next day and the thing's got a set of nuts like this big. And so you just have to be careful, because that little guy could just go to town and then you're gonna be lambing in the middle of February and everything dies.
The thing about sheep and ewes are once one starts to kind of come into heat, and they need that ram to trigger them to come into heat. Once they smell the ram, then one of them starts to come into heat, and then the other one the other one starts to come into heat, and they all come into heat within boom 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 within 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a ram lamb in there,
he's gonna go to town. He's
gonna have a lot of lady friends.
Yeah.
So just be careful.
Yeah, just be careful.
The worst thing you can do is be having to lamb in December because you didn't take your rams out young enough.
God, that'd be terrible.
Soon enough. But
they just be dying all over the place.
Yeah, you'd have to get them into a barn.
Yeah, there's no way.
You just can't lamb in the snow.
No, or even just in even if it doesn't snow, even if it's just cold and wet, around anywhere in the neighborhood of freezing and wet, same problem.